Hi, this is Melissa Vasquez with MP 594. Week 5 presentation is Public Service Management, and here I'm going to talk to you about a scenario that needs to change and the theories that I would use in order to address that scenario. For my scenario, I picked CDPH, and issues ar- that arose during the COVID season, but really it can be any agency because this can happen in any organization. And for instance, my scenario is about improving the relationships between employees and management because let's say that maybe staff feels unheard, they feel frustrated with the procedures, they feel unmotivated because they don't feel that their voice is being heard. So the concepts that I'm going to address are communication, management, and motivation. And I'm going to use mainly Katzen-Kahn open system process, in which he talks about how that in organizations there are inputs, uh, throughput. So inputs, they can be employees. In this case, it would be employees, the managers, methods of communication, or the methods of motivating employees, and throughputs, how these things are done, so that once you get to the output, you're having that desired outcome. This is a cyclical cycle, so it requires feedback in order to readjust. So the open systems, basically what it addresses is the adaptability to the changing environments, to pressures, whatever management in public organizations might come into. So the first topic I have is communication. So in Chester Barnard's theory, he talks about cooperative systems and how they rely on the willingness of participants to get activities accomplished. It says that goals that come from the top, the goals will come from the top, but the willingness to get those goals accomplished comes from the bottom. He also talks about the conception of authority in terms of cooperative phenomena and how it needs skillful leaders um, so that the orders that are given to the recipient are fully understood by the recipient, and it requires understanding because they need to comply with it. So that kind of connects to Follett's theory of circular response, where she states that circular response is basically where employees and management give each other feedback. So rather than taking orders from the top, it's more about taking orders from the situation, in which they both accept that the situation is what leads to some sort of solution. It's what leads the actions, and they agree upon what needs to be done. Um, she she also states that um, management must foster collaborative decision making, where managers and employees discover the most appropriate solution to a problem. So, going back to Katz and Kahn, the same thing would be, who are your inputs, your employees and managers, and the processes that are made, or the processes that are needed. Maybe it's, what kinds of methods of communication are they having? An open communication where there's both directions, where the employee can openly, um, whether it's through email or going directly to a person. And finally, what's the output? Are staff being heard? This through communication, we tend to develop trust. And how do we acknowledge that, or how do we know that it's being done? Well, it's based on how open we are, our management, how much. openness there is from management to receive that feedback and readjust as needed. So the second topic I want to talk about um, is leadership or management, actually. And I'm going back to Chester Barnard's because he states that the power lies in the hands of those receiving orders and not necessarily the giver. So the recipient, when the recipient receives the order, it's not that it's up to them, but that's when it determines, considering how much buy-in there is, they will determine if they will obey or dismiss the order. And really, he states that that's where the power lies. This is kind of similar to Selznick, what he said, in that in terms of like when there is an imbalance in leadership, or you're getting where there's not the rules are not being complied with. There's a process of co-optation, which is he states it that it's about absorbing new elements into leadership or policy, and it allows for the adaptability of changing environments so that it shapes the organization and or the leadership itself. Um, co-optation, informal co-optation, the leadership needs to earn the consent to be governed, and this in this case the employees, so that they can establish legitimacy. So what this talks about is the requirement for management to be adaptable to the needs of their employees, to the needs of their environment, so on and so forth. And this kind of gives us a segue. Well, how do you uh, create that buy-in? How do you earn the employees' trust so that they are willingly complying with the rules or whatever activities need to get done? And he actually also talks about that or Barnard actually talks about that a critical ingredient in the formation of that in organizations, it is critical to have that ingredient of a collective purpose, because that's what becomes morally binding. And this kind of reminds me of Henry Fayol as well, because he talks about the esprit de corps, or that pride, of who you are, of who you are, how the organization becomes you. And he states that management must foster that morale in employees, and that the talent is needed to coordinate the effort, um, to carry through the activities of an organization. So uh, this kind of and to kind of go deeper into it, there is Simon Herbert, who says that in an organization there must be a scientifically relevant description of an organization. So why do we do what we do? And he talks about defining the values, and letting those values, being clear about what those values are so that they can drive us and influence what we are meant to do within that organization, so that we are later able to come back and say, did we accomplish what we meant to set out to do? So again, this is kind of the transitioning point of how you motivate people. How do you adapt to your employees, and then how do you start that motivation? And finally, to continue this motivation, um, uh, it requires that leadership be keenly aware of his or her staff. So again, Chester Barnard, he says that in informal organizations, there, that's where social relationships are built. But overall, what formal and informal relations are what influence productivity and job satisfaction, because there's a feeling of belonging, of status, of self-respect. And this is very similar to what Maslow states, that when people are in a group in which they find themselves that they are respected and they give respect. It builds the next level of the hierarchy of needs, and they start building that esteem in which they want to do more. They want to build the strength. They want to collaborate. They want to work together to be able to put their greatest effort, which leads to self-actualization. And this is when the level of employees, this is where we want to get as an organization. We want to have them reach that level of self-actualization so that they can give to the organization to their fullest potential. Finally, McGregor talks about properly identifying the needs of each individual, whether it's theory X or theory Y. And one of the other principles, he talks about a principle of integration, and it demands that both the organization and individuals need to know, or that the management needs to know the demands of the organization and individuals' needs in order to fulfill the goals of the organization. So, in conclusion, whether it's communication, management, or motivation, I talked a little bit about communication and how we can use Katzen-Kahn, the process of open system, and it really relies on being able to um, adjust as needed in order to get the desired effect or the desired type of communication. Do we want trust when it comes to communication? Well, how do we get there? What process do we use to get there? In management, well, identifying what the needs are of the employees, and based employees or your staff, they're going to keep changing, whether it's new people that come in. So it requires management to be adaptable to the needs of the employee. And finally, in motivation, well, using certain skills, or having that um, the skills, or using leadership actually that is very keenly aware of the needs of the staff. And finally, what would be the desired output in this case? It would be productivity, or acquiring or being able to meet the organization's goals. And if that's not what is being uh, that is not what the final product is, then a changing and readjusting, asking for feedback, or whatever other external type of feedback is, ooh, whatever type of feedback is being returned in order to adjust that cycle. This concludes my presentation. Questions and comments are greatly appreciated, and thanks for watching.